Good morning and welcome to The VUU. So glad that you could join us today. And I am Joanna Fontaine Crawford. I am here in very overcast, pretty rainy Austin. And let me have our other regulars introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Aisha Hauser and I'm in Seattle. Same weather as Houston.
Hi, everybody.
Hank Burrs.
Okay there? All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Patrice Curtis in Washington, D.C., and it's sunny, but it's finally cooled off. We had a horrible hot heat wave, but now it's really very nice.
Patrice, we don't believe you because I think all of us are seeing a completely blank screen behind you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm seeing blank.
Blank, eh?
So we will have to take your word for it. Hank, what's up with you?
Hey, folks, I'm calling from my office in Milton, Massachusetts. It's sunny here. Life is good. I went to a chapter meeting yesterday where there was just a lot of some people just feeling, sad, a lot of new changes, and I kept going around going like, I feel great. Look, it's sunny out. The snow is gone. This is great. And I don't know. I don't think I didn't win any friends that day, but that's fine.
They didn't like you anyway.
Yeah.
And we have two guests today. We will be talking about their topic, being a musician and a minister later. But if y'all could go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Well, I'm Dan. Oh, you want to go? Me?
No, you go, Dan. Right. You're awesome.
I'm Dan Schatz, and I'm the minister of the Foxmont Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Warrington, Pennsylvania. And I am here in Pennsylvania where it is absolutely gorgeous outside.
I'm Meg Barnhouse. I'm the senior minister of the First VUU of Austin, Texas. So I'm having the same weather as Joanna is having, kind of overcast and rainy. But we like it because we need the rain.
We do. I am not going to complain. We're supposed to be getting rain for like the next 2 weeks. I'm like, just fill up the aquifers, fill up Lake Travis. So I'm curious what's going on in everyone's little villages. Meg can join me in this. In our little village, I posted something on Facebook about how I now, every morning, I say a prayer, please don't let Texas embarrass me today, and I'm just still waiting. So we have a big day today. This is the final day of our our Texas legislature meeting in special or in regular session. They will go until midnight, and then the clock stops on all of the bills. And if they haven't been heard, then either they won't be heard or they would have to go to special session. And I know that I would assume Meg are both paying attention to House Bill 4105, which is called something like the Texas Sovereignty and Marriage Act, and basically it says we don't care what the Supreme Court says, we ain't going to have any marriage equality in our state. No, sir. So we are, the last I checked, it was like a list of 100 bills that were before it, so we're hoping that we can just run out the clock. And Meg, I'm in Williamson County. Meg, you're actually in Travis County and in Austin. And I understand that the Austin City Council just had some kind of interesting education thing going on.
Yes, they had to hire an expert from Florida to teach the...
Wait a minute. Let me just say right there.
Yeah.
An expert from Florida. Okay. Is it about elders otherwise, or Disney otherwise? Okay, sorry.
Let it sink in.
Okay, those Florida jokes, those have to end. Because it's not true in all of Florida.
Welcome to our world, honey.
Says the newly settled minister in Clearwater.
So anyway, they got an expert in to teach city council employees how to deal with females, since there are so many new females on our city council. They had to have a long training session, and they said things like, women tend to ask a lot more questions and they don't like dealing with numbers.
What? And they don't like to read. They don't like to read their packets, their agendas. They're just
Are you kidding me?
I know, it's so, I just want to go down there and...
Horrible.
math.
It's like a Daily Show skit. That's what I mean. That sounds like a setup for the Daily Show. They brought an expert from Florida. We start there, and then I mean, what?
Frankly, the Daily Show should be giving Texas a kickback for all the material we give them.
I know, they hardly have to work at all.
I think we may, we have the Florida Man, though. You guys know about the Florida Man?
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
Of course, Hank does.
Oh yeah. I follow the Florida Man. Oh yeah.
I am unfamiliar. I do not know what
Go
that
ahead,
is.
Hank. You'll do such a much better job.
Well,
I just learned about Florida Man, so.
It's a Twitter account, and but there are always those news stories that start Florida man arrested or Florida man found hanging, Florida man found in bed with. So it's all those news reports just that basically start with Florida man or Florida woman, and they find all those things and they publish them, and so it's a fun read on Twitter.
Fun. And I see that we have our illustrious leader joining us. What's going on where you are, Meg Riley?
Other than you're muted. Or your sound's not working.
Oh, sorry. Sound's not
No.
working. Get back to us when we can hear you. So everyone else who's not in Texas or Florida, what's going on in your state?
Well, in Buffalo, New York, the weather is lovely, but for this seminarian, it's the last day of the semester, and my world has tightened to a tiny little bubble on my desk, on my laptop, and I have nothing to report except that my paper on Islam is going very slowly.
My daughter, who's in an all-girls Catholic school, comes home this week and goes, "Mom, today I learned the opposite of what we learned in OWL." I said, "Oh, God help me." She said, "I learned marriage is only between a man and a woman, and masturbation is a sin." Now we know what the opposite of OWL is. She's in an all-girls Catholic school in Seattle. So now we know what the opposite of OWL is.
There you go. Can you guys hear me now? Was it my
Yes.
headset?
Yes.
Oh,
No, we can hear you now.
I'll try. It's nice to see everybody. Great to have guests. I woke up this morning to learn that last night the police in Minneapolis went crazy and maced my kid.
Oh,
And
no.
so that's what I've been dealing with this morning. I went out in the garden and didn't come in for 3 hours. I needed that to resettle. So, of course, my kid wants to get right back out there, and I want to tackle this child and say, don't get out of bed for a month. And, of course, it's always the young people who have done everything. But, yeah, I went down. It was a solidarity vigil with Madison and the lack of accountability there for that killing. And it didn't feel good. When I left, I said, this is the kind of action, because it was very small, and it wasn't done by Black Lives Matter. It was done by a new group I hadn't heard of called Black Liberation. And it just felt like it was small enough that it felt people were just angry. People are just angry. Why wouldn't they be? And so the cops, that's what I was worried about. They just, there weren't any marshals. Gia likes order, and so Gia was trying to keep order, and someone was trying to drive into the crowd. So Gia sat on the hood of this SUV to stop somebody from driving into the crowd, at which point the police maced Gia. So, anyway, I'm upset because, of course, this is like crazy life with a teenager, right? So I text Gia when I start seeing on Twitter about the macing. I text Gia, how are you? I'm fine, I'm studying. And I'm like, oh, good, you left before that happened. Well, it apparently wasn't worth mentioning. I'm fine now. An hour ago I was maced to an 18-year-old. So I didn't know about it till I woke up this morning, and Ashley Harana texted me and said, oh, I saw the photos of Gia getting maced. And I was like, what? So anyway, those of you who have raised people know that when they're 18, all bets are off.
Yeah, but I have to say, Meg, there's how as children we look at whatever our parents do and we go, oh, this is normal, everyone's family does this. I think you're doing the same thing, and not all of us. Not all of us are having our children, maced and being sued by Mall of America. And kudos for you. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Well, the apple is rolling down the hill, I'll tell you that, because this tree would like to just bring that apple back and say, come on, honey, I'll put some whipped cream on you. But, I mean, you look at history, it's always the people this age who are just not going to take no for an answer. So we have another vigil now tonight to protest what happened last night, and Gia says it'll be better. Oh yeah, it's a Black Lives Matter one. It'll be better, and of course I go to all of them. Yeah, I do. I mean, like, I had no interest in marching to the police precinct last night and yelling, so I left at that point. I thought that's for young people to do. But yeah, I go to all of them, Meg. I mean, I feel. What? Yeah, exactly.
Like your daughter.
Yes, my kid is always up there in the lead. I feel like this is a moment I'm not going to miss. I've waited a long time for this moment. And I'll say one other thing. I'm part of this group called Showing Up for Racial Justice, which is for white people to really do stuff. And it's a great national group for which you can start local chapters, which is what we're doing here. I'm part of a group of people working on that. And they're launching a neighbor-to-neighbor conversations program that I'm really interested in, where white people talk to white people about racism and use the tactic of saying, would you like to put a Black Lives Matter sign in your yard? Which in Minnesota is kind of like saying, would you like to stand out from the crowd? It's not a Minnesota
Would you like to stand in your front yard naked?
Exactly. So, but I'm really looking forward to it because we did the marriage equality campaign that was all conversation based, and it was so powerful, those conversations. And I feel like we haven't had an in on racial justice, but all these people have seen people get killed in videos now. And if that doesn't cause cognitive dissonance for conversation, I don't know what would. So anyway, that's what's going on in Minneapolis. Glad you asked.
So Dan, Hank, what's going on where you are?
Well, go ahead, Dan. You go first.
Well, Pennsylvania, I'm in the Philadelphia area, so we're kind of reeling from this train accident that happened yesterday, and all the news is about the accident. And it's amazing, you go and I've got members of my congregation that might have been on that train. They weren't, but that's a train that we take. And I've got people heading up to New York this weekend and saying, I'm really glad I'm not taking the train. So
One of our ministers
option
on it.
at this point.
One of our UU ministers was on that train.
I heard that.
Carol Sissel. Yeah.
You helped a pregnant woman get out. That's really heroic.
Well, that's a relief if we had a minister on the train that she was heroic.
Yeah.
But and the other thing is, we're just 90 minutes north of Baltimore, so we're still. I haven't been able to be down there, but these are our neighbors, and I grew up near Baltimore. So what's been going on there has just really affected certainly me and how I see the area that I grew up in. And I was in the D.C. suburbs, which was kind of a world away from Baltimore, but only about half an hour by car. So the stuff that you're doing, Meg, and that your daughter is doing are really important.
Yeah. Well, Dan, I was also reading about the anniversary of the bombing of the neighborhood in Philadelphia, which I'd known a little bit about it, but I've been looking at and reading those stories. Is that big news in Philadelphia right now?
Yeah, it is. It's not. I mean, I think it kind of got. It would have been bigger news had it not been for the train accident. That's that all people are talking about. But it's been on the news still. The MOVE bombing. For people who don't remember, I guess it was 30 years ago, that there was a black nationalist quasi-religious group that owned a townhome, and they had kind of a commune in Philadelphia, and there were many noise complaints and things like that. And when the police came, after very brief conversations, they basically firebombed the neighborhood, and they destroyed like 30 homes, I think.
Oh, I thought it was like 200. I mean, it was really freaky. How many?
I can't remember. I wasn't here at that time when that was going on, but it did a lot of damage. They basically destroyed a city block.
It was a mess.
Yeah, I had known a little bit about that, but it's really.
There's an excellent documentary that you can get on Netflix called Let It Burn, which tells you the whole horrible story. And the title is a reference to the fact that after the police dropped a bomb that started a fire on the roof of this townhouse, and this townhouse is like, the model where the row houses are all connected.
Right.
The firemen stood back and on the orders of the fire chief and just let it burn down, and it spread across the neighborhood.
I thought one of the touching things for me about this anniversary was, one of the speakers at the rally that they held was the daughter of activists from MOVE, and she was born in jail. And to me, that, I don't know, that just touched my heart.
Wow. So Hank, what's happening there?
Well, I actually have, we've had all these, these horrible reminders and things. This past Sunday, the First Parish Church here in Milton that I serve, and a number of other Unitarian Universalist congregations and other congregations of other denominations took part in the 19th annual Mother's Day Walk for Peace, which has been going on, I said, for 19 years. It was started by a woman named Tina Cherry when her teenage son was killed in a gang crossfire. Like the gangs were two gangs were shooting at each other, and they killed her son, who was on his way actually to an anti-violence program. And so she started this, the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute, and they've been and one of their big events every year as a fundraiser and to get their name out there is this Mother's Day walk. And I think really from the get-go, members of First Parish here in Milton have been taking part in it, and they were amazed at the size, the huge turnout. So you had, I think, in past years it was maybe 4,000 people. This year it was well above 10,000 people who showed up, in part because of the it was a beautiful day. But I think even more so because it was, the Black Lives Matter. It's in the air. People want to be out, and it was fantastic march through parts of Dorchester that many people that I know, whether from the church and other folks who were there, said like, I don't know where we are. I've never been here. So it's a good reminder for folks, and it was just a great opportunity for our church to be out and among other folks. And there were so many other UU churches for a while. It looked like a banner parade because like everyone, all the churches were out there, and the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute raised a whole lot of money through it, and they continue to do great work. So I'm just really, really pleased with that. So that's what's going on here. And as I said yesterday, I was at the local UUMA, the Ministers Association chapter meeting, and Nate Walker came and talked about his new book on preaching, which was a blast, and it was a lot of fun. So pleased to be there for that.
Cool. Well, I am so excited about our guests that we have today and the whole subject matter. It's very interesting. There are so many UU ministers who are amateur musicians, but we have with us today two ministers who are professional musicians, and I just have so many questions about how that works and how your church supports it and what it's like to be a real live rock star. So Dan, we'll start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do musically?
Well, first of all, let me say the definition of professional musician, I'm a folk musician, and you can literally make tens of dollars every year as a folk musician, so long as you don't actually do anything. If you don't record, if you don't actually travel, if you can make upwards of sometimes as much as $25 a year. But what I do is traditional and contemporary folk music, and I try to do music that builds community, but also music that is deeply rooted in tradition. So and tradition from various places. So, for example, right now I'm in the finishing stages of an album which is dedicated to the people who give us our food, farmers and field workers and fisher folk. And some of the songs are traditional, some of the songs are mine, some of the songs are come from other songwriters. But to me, it's very much a part of the ministry. It's an aspect of the ministry. And when you think about things like ethical eating, and when you think about the environment, all of that is closely connected to the people that are involved in these stories and their communities. And our folk traditions and our music is part of what that's about.
And Reverend Meg Barnhouse, tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Well, I just put out an album last year, my third one. It's called House of Love. It's up on iTunes. And my two tasks, I think, usually when I'm writing songs are pastoral care and lifting up the spirit. I think the Unitarian Universalist movement is badly in need of its own gospel tradition. I think we don't have enough rowdy gospel songs, and so House of Love is one of those. And then other songs are answers to people who wrote me by email. One person said, I'm turning 50 and I really need a song that's going to make me feel strong and good about my life. And so it only took me a year and a half, but I wrote her a song. And that's on the album. It's called You're Made of Stars. And so I think of it as part of my ministry. Every couple of months I go somewhere, usually to a district gathering or a ministers meeting or some kind of cluster group, and speak and sing and try to reach the people and re-enliven them about being Unitarian Universalists. And, we get a lot of our energy from social justice work, and yet we also need energy from a more personal. Well, I don't want to say that because social justice work is very personal. Anyway, we need energy and we need nourishment. And one of the parts of my congregation's mission is to nourish souls, and I think of my music as a way of nourishing the souls.
Well, part of social justice work is music, right? I mean, there's a soundtrack to every social justice movement in the world, and
That's right. And a lot of dictators have been quoted as saying, first you kill the songwriters, because if you have a song that the people love to sing together, that gives the movement strength and focus.
Well, one of the projects that I did a few years back was I helped to produce a double CD set for Utah Phillips, who was a Unitarian Universalist and a songwriter and storyteller and activist. And by the way, Meg, it might comfort you to know that his son Duncan told me that Utah's lifelong ambition for Duncan was to see him get arrested. So, which Duncan I think still hasn't managed to do. He's now been on stage and hopped a freight, but he hasn't been arrested yet. But the title of that album was Singing Through the Hard Times. And what Utah said is, we are singing through the hard times, singing through the hard times, working for the good times to come. And to me, that's an example of where music, the music is both personal and political. There's a verse, the verse that I sang on that album of that song was, when the war clouds gather, it's so easy to get angry and just as hard not to be afraid. But you know in your own heart, no matter what happens, you just can't turn your back and walk away. And I keep thinking of that song in these days with everything that's going on, with all of the demonstrations, with what's happening, with what just happened last night in Minneapolis. The music gives us courage and comfort. It can be political and pastoral at the same time.
And music we take with us. I mean, one of the things that wherever I go, I have with me, I always end up doing a mini worship or a worship, and I read from Meg's books. I'm a little bit of a Meg groupie, and All Will Be Well. I always introduce to people, and inevitably, even the congregation where I am now, have people come up to me and thank me for introducing them to Meg and All Will Be Well, and they'll say, I downloaded All Will Be Well, so whenever I'm not feeling well, I just turn it on, I hear Meg singing, and then I know all will be okay. And I've had many. I went to a women's perspective retreat 2 years in a row. This year Kaya came. Yay, we're trying to get Meg one year. But all of them, they just inevitably, and it's such a it's like carrying, I don't know, it's inspiration on the go. I just, all of us, my husband, he has All Will Be Well. And last year at our board retreat, we had just a minister had resigned, so I wore my All Will Be Well T-shirt that Meg gave me. So it's amazing. I'm gushing now, so I'm gonna be quiet.
I could go on and on, really, Isha.
This is one of my questions, Meg and Dan. What does that feel like when you get what Meg just got, when you have the person who comes up and says, this song that you wrote has affected or changed my life?
Oh, for me, it keeps me going. I keep a file in my computer of emails people have sent me about that song, or there's another song called Chrysalis that some people like. There's a baby lullaby that some people really, one person used it at their baby's memorial service. And so I feel moved and shaken, and very, very grateful to have had those songs come through me. Some songs you just feel like they come through you, and other songs you feel like you really have to build them piece by piece. And some are a little of both. And so, yeah, it feels wonderful, Joanna. Thank you for asking.
I think it's an example of where music is ministry. It's kind of the same feeling as I would get when somebody comes up maybe 6 or 8 months or 2 years after I preached something and say, remember what you said back then? And I have no idea what I said back then. I preach them and forget them. And the difference is the songs I remember. The sermons I forget. But it's kind of that same feeling. It's that, I've been able to do what the songs are for. They've reached somebody in their heart, This time of year, there's a song that I wrote a few years ago called Leave Time. Leave time for the turning of the season, leave time for the longing of the day, time for the heart, time for the reason, time for the quiet of the way. And particularly this time of year, a lot of colleagues remind me of that song, because I think a lot of us are all feeling the need to do that. Yes, it's an incredibly warm feeling.
And Meg, you'd mentioned something about your church. How supportive are churches to having a minister who is also a professional musician?
Well, I always, if ever I am in negotiation with a congregation about being called there, I say, this is part of my ministry. I have a national ministry, and here's what I want in my covenant. I want you all to say, when I publish a new book or put out a new CD, I want you to say, I'm proud of you, and I want you to throw me a party. And I don't want to hear, oh, I'm amazed you have time for that with this job as big as this. And they all go, okay, we can do that. My congregation right now, I don't sing very much during the service. I always sing a benediction. But there are many, many people in my congregation that don't know I write books or sing songs. I just...
they don't know that you are the Meg Barnhouse?
No, they don't. They don't. And but I thought I would, I've been there 4 years. I just wanted to save something for year 5 or 6, because I don't want them to get bored. So I'll spring it on them later.
Well, do you guys ever feel like your congregation expects you guys to do like a fundraiser concert for them. I mean, have any of your congregations ever sort of gotten into thinking of you as like it's almost as if you have like a spouse who's really good at fundraising or something. That like here's this other person. Meg's laughing because my wife does. But that that they kind of go, oh, and we'll get this extra bonus person almost who will come in and do this stuff for us, so we don't have to do it ourselves.
Right. Well, I'm actually doing a fundraising concert for them in the fall, which I haven't done a concert for the congregation for. It's been several years, and every once in a while I've done something like that for them. But to me, it's very important because I am a musician and because I'm a musician who has achieved some level of recognition and notoriety that I leave space for the music and the congregation. And so, for example, in the services, I will sing in the services every once in a while, maybe every 3 or 4 months, sometimes more, sometimes less. But I very intentionally leave space in the services for our other musicians, for the musicians that are in the congregation, and try to encourage the music that's in the congregation. And fortunately, we also have a wonderful music director, John Hook, who is very good at bringing out the music from people in the congregation and finding folks. And that's for 2 reasons. One, because I believe firmly that worship is something that we all do together, and that belongs to the entire congregation. And the other reason is that, particularly in the services, when I'm preaching and I'm also doing music, it starts to feel less like a service and more like a performance. It becomes more about me and less about our communal experience. So I tend to use the music and the services sparingly. And yeah, the fundraising concert I'm doing this year because we're in a little bit of a hole, and it was something that I could contribute, and it had been a long time. So I said, tell you what, I'll do this year. But I wouldn't do it every year. Yeah.
Here's what I'm wondering. I saw this documentary about people with Alzheimer's and music, and how people have no memory of who they are. If they listen to the music of the time they loved, they can come back into like a whole kind of identity from it. And they say that after strokes, sometimes people can sing who can't speak. And I wonder about, for me, as Aisha mentioned, it's music I go to when I need deep comfort. It's not, it's poetry too, but it's not sermons. I mean, it's just not. And I wonder about the pieces of worship. I mean, I'm just listening to both of you say, I don't want to make it be about me, but I wonder, I mean, cantors, it's not about the cantor, that they're being a cantor in a synagogue. I'm really interested.
The songs they're singing, they don't write. I sing sometimes as part of a sermon. If I'm talking about Selma, for example, I'll say, and as they went, they were singing, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. And then I ask people to sing with me, and then I'll preach a little more and then sing another verse. But my own songs, I don't know. I just feel really shy about it. And I think that's misguided. I think you're correct, Meg. I think it's a mistake to be that shy. In Austin, Texas, we've got so many musicians in the congregation, and they're all amazing. And we've got a great music director. So I just feel like, I don't know. I'm thinking about it strongly, as you can tell. I'm having a fight with myself about it right here in front of you.
I actually did something this fall that I rarely do. I write songs, but I don't write songs all the time. I write maybe a couple songs a year. But I was looking for a reading for a service, and I wasn't really finding something, and I said, okay, I'll start on the sermon. It wasn't really coming, and I just jotted down some ideas, realized I was starting to write a song. So I wrote the song for the service, and that ended up, taking the place of the reading. I don't think people remember the service very well. They do remember the song. But, as my grandmother used to say, if we did it every day, it wouldn't be special. So it's one thing to do that from time to time and to bring in this gift that I have and this thing that I can contribute. But if we did it every Sunday, I think it would lose something, and it would take I feel it would take something away from those other people in the congregation.
So you're not selling your CDs at coffee hour? It's not.
I have. I actually have one CD book combination that is like a meditation manual with a CD, and there's 17 songs and 17 meditations that go with the that kind of go along with the songs, although they also stand independently. And we do have that one for sale in Social Hour. I don't have the other ones for sale in Social Hour, but I keep them in my office if anybody asks.
I've got a coloring book, but yeah, good.
So you both, Meg and Dan, you both talked about the challenge of not performing music. And I'm wondering, it's always been kind of a question in the back of my mind, is how we bring music, phenomenal music, into the sanctuary, and yet keep away from that sense of it being a performance.
Oh,
man.
man.
Any tips about that?
Yeah, you just touched on, you've actually just tromped on something that I go back and forth about all the time, because I would say 30% of my congregation, I've got a clapping congregation. Everybody claps.
Yes.
Wow, Austin has changed since I was there.
Yes, Lord. And I've worked very hard on that, and they're wonderful about it. And but a lot of the people come through the line and hand me a little note or clasp both of my hands and say, "Can't you do anything about this terrible clapping?" And I say, thank you for letting, I just say thank you so much for sharing. But I'm not going to do anything about the terrible clapping, because I think it's a classist New England white people's dream of reverence. And I
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, Aisha, we know how you feel. We know how you feel.
Aisha, are you the poster child for classist New England?
Yes. Thank you.
He's been subjected to it.
Pacific Northwest.
And I don't mean anything bad about New England, really.
Right. Yeah.
If you like it, that's fine. I just think that there is no way to separate offering music in a worship service from performing. In a musician sings with their whole heart open, and I think there's a Christian paradigm that I grew up with where the singer goes, "Oh, it wasn't me, it was the Lord," and that's kind of BS. I mean, you do get filled up with the Spirit, and there is a magic to singing and a spirit to singing, but it is a performance, and the people feel filled up too, and they want to respond, and then for them not to be able to respond, for them to have to sit still or not clap, is just, to me, it's Meshuggah. I don't understand it.
Well, I think well, first of all, if we don't admit that there's an element of performing and preaching, then I think we're fooling ourselves.
Hello.
Oh no, I call sacred theater, 100%.
Yeah.
That's why we try so hard, right, to make everything work together and be beautiful and flow and
Worship should be beautiful. It should be aesthetically beautiful. And in our congregation, by the way, Meg, sometimes they clap, sometimes they don't. And if it's a more meditative service, things are quiet. If it's a more up kind of gospel-y service, then people will clap. And if the kids are up saying, if the youth are up saying anything, then everybody always claps. And they're very supportive that way.
It's when they start booing. That's.
Yeah, I was going to say, the challenge is that's the challenge, right? So when it's beautiful.
Or when I start booing, or when I start booing during joys and concerns. No.
So there's times when the music's not quite right and everybody's kind of more polite, or there's no clapping at all. That's when it's like, ooh, because the musician who's not brilliant still is singing with their heart open and everything there, and
right. And that's
how I don't like clapping. I'm just going to speak up for the clapping. All right, and it's not because I'm a Yankee and all that.
You do like clapping, Meg, or you don't? Sorry.
I like to hold the energy. To me,
it's
a gift that's given, and so sure, there's performance in all of it.
Right.
But to me, worship is about receiving it, and clapping it dissipates it. So
that's how I feel. Maybe this is an I thing, E thing. I don't know.
Like, I'm too prissy. I'll yell amen a lot. But I just feel like it's sort of, to me, when people clap, it like puts a frame around it and it's over then. And if you don't clap and you hold it in, then the energy for me keeps moving. I don't care if other people clap, but I don't clap. I'm not like an anti-clap. I just prefer myself to sit with it.
When we all watch your sermons online, we won't tell you that we're clapping. I didn't want to get too waylaid by the clapping thing. What I was thinking of is this element of performance, because to me, the kind of music I do is about building community, and it's about connecting people. And in folk music, we are, the parody is we're all singing together. We're come on, you have to sing on the chorus of this song. And there's a lot of truth in that because we're trying to build community. And I think the best musicians and the best preachers are people who allow that energy to come through them and to meet the audience or the congregation somewhere between. And I always think maybe at best in a sermon, what I put out there is maybe 40% of what people are experiencing. And the rest is what they bring to it. And what I'm trying to do is touch something within them. In music, maybe a little bit more of it is me, but it's still not necessarily about me. It's not, hey, look at me. It's listen to this song, hear this song, experience this music. There's a wonderful album by one of my heroes, Hazel Dickens, who said the album was called "It's Hard to Tell the Singer from the Song," and I think if we can bring that into the music that we do in worship, then that's a kind of performance that makes sense to me in the context of worship. If I don't know, I'm up there twerking. That's not going to work for me.
Oh, whoa.
Maybe there's I'm sorry. No!
Hank has tried it and it didn't work out.
I can't unthink that, Dan.
We already did the Hank twerking episode. We're not going to
did we? My deepest apologies.
and then we did the episode where we had to apologize for the Hank twerking
episode.
So I'm curious. I'm not a musician, but I absolutely love music, and it influences so often my sermons. I'll go for a walk and I'll listen to a particular song, and that I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this gives me my direction on this sermon. How much does music influence the other things that you do in your life?
I'm always thinking about, well, I always have a song stuck in my head, number one, but that's just more irritating than elucidating. I sometimes wake up with melodies, especially when I'm putting a CD together. For some reason, the songs just kind of show up in the morning, and I write them out. And sometimes when I hear a story from a person in my congregation, I think about a song I could write for them. I like writing songs to to touch a particular person. Like
Aisha would like one, for the record. Aisha would like us. Just
you would like a song. I will.
Yes,
I will start writing
Aisha
names.
would.
Mhm.
On a serious note, Meg, that is so sweet.
Oh, thank you, and I won't clap for what you said now because I heard you say you didn't like clapping, so I will. But we're not worshiping.
I'm actually with Meg. You know,
Yeah,
I think energy moves through all of us differently, and I want to understand those folks who, when they clap, how that works for them, as opposed to squelching them. You know.
Yes, thank you, and I'm going to work to understand the people who don't like him. That's much better than just saying, I'm going to be a better person, Aisha. I see you laughing, but I am going to try to be a better person. I'm going to write a song about that. But it won't be a happy song. It'll be heavy metal. Anyway, what was the question? I don't remember.
How does music influence your preaching or anything else that you do?
Oh, well, gosh, I have the best music director in the world. Sorry about all y'all's other ones. Brent,
I'm sorry, we have the best music director in the world.
Wait a minute. I want to know what makes the best music director.
Anyway, we have a planning session in August every year, and we just get so happy about the musical services we're going to do. Like I said, I'm going to preach about the problem of evil. And he said, can we do a Black Sabbath service? And I said, of course. And so we had a Black Sabbath service. And then we had a Johnny Cash. We had a Leonard Cohen, of course. But I put the kibosh on. They said we're going to have a year off from Leonard Cohen. No Leonard Cohen songs. But he was very sad, but he did that for me. So those songs really do inspire. We inspire each other. And one of the things I offered for the auction was give me 2 Broadway songs and we will perform them and I will make a sermon using those as my text. So I did that at the church I served in South Carolina, and the person who won gave me I'm Just a Girl Who Can't Say No, The Sharks and the Jets, and Luck Be a Lady Tonight. So that was hard, but I thought it was inappropriate for the minister to sing I'm Just a Girl Who Can't Say No, so I asked the DRE to sing that one.
What?
Make the DRE do it!
What?
She was a cabaret singer, so she was very...
did not have an intern. If you'd had an intern, it would have been the intern.
It would have been the intern for sure. The music director at that church, who was a lovely 75-year-old queen who had been in the Air Force Band, we adored each other. He sang Luck Be a Lady Tonight. He wanted to sing I'm Just a Girl Who Can't Say No, but I thought, Anyway, and I did the Sharks and the Jets song, and it was really fun. I can't remember what I preached about, but it fit.
So,
but anyway, music does. Go ahead.
Yeah, so to me, one of the things that I have done recently is I put together these compilations, these tribute albums. I did one for Utah Phillips. I did one for that was just released last year for Gene Ritchie, another folk musician. And I certainly find that producing these things, I'm getting into the music of our tradition bearers and of certain traditions, and I certainly find that influences my thinking. It's there all the time because I'm working on it. Basically, when I'm not doing family or church, I'm doing music, and I find that as I get into these things, it's affecting where I am spiritually, and it's affecting the things that I'm aware of and that I talk about. With the Gene Ritchie Project, one of the things we're doing is supporting a group called Appalachian Voices that works to end mountaintop removal. And I'm very aware right now of the connection between climate change and clean water and environmental issues, and that comes into my work. And the other thing that I'm aware of in those producing situations is the importance of honoring our elders, and particularly of keeping people in the circle of the living. Gene is Utah died while we were working on the CD, although he was very pleased it was happening. But Gene is still with us. She had a stroke several years back, and that's kind of why we decided it was time to do this. And it has meant the world to her to be able to know that people haven't forgotten her, and her old friends still remember her, and her songs are now being sung by new generations. And plus, both of these particular people and folks like Pete Seeger and other people that are sort of our elders and tradition bearers are such wonderful writers and thinkers. When I'm feeling dismal, I can go back to a poem that Gene Ritchie wrote, that actually I had persuaded Pete Seeger to record for the Gene Ritchie tribute. He did a spoken word, and it was majestic, about celebrating life. I celebrate life. I tangle my fingers in its long-haired grasses with gladness. And just beautiful poetry, and that lifts me. It gives me courage and connects me spiritually.
Meg, I know that at your recent service auction, you had one very intriguing musical item that was up. Tell us about that.
Oh, gosh. Well, there are so many people who just deeply hate one hymn or another, and I thought that perhaps people would pay money not to hear that hymn for a year. So I said the winner of this item gets to put one hymn in timeout for an entire year.
What did they choose?
Well, I was really surprised. They chose Bring Many Names, which I had never chosen, but apparently one of my assistant ministers likes it quite a bit. They said that they were really sick of that one, and they didn't want to hear it again. And the guy who came in second on that said he just had wanted to put the kibosh on anything with the word pilgrim in it.
Oh, boo.
Oh, now see, you only get to pick one.
So,
Yeah.
so
He has to pony up next year.
Meg, what did that go for?
It went for about $75, I think. Not a lot.
I wonder if we could ban the whole hymnal for 1,000 for a year. Oh, did I say that? Was I not on mute? Sorry.
I was going to say, did you say that out loud?
Now you know how I feel.
There are definitely hymns that that I've never chosen in my 16 odd years of ministry here. That I kind of go, oh no, that doesn't. I don't sing it while I'm not while I'm here.
Are there any that y'all avoid?
Do you want to know what it is, or
Yes.
Spirit of Life?
Yes.
Spirit of Life.
I will use Spirit of Life sparingly. The one that I avoid is Enter, Rejoice, and Come In, because we sang it every Sunday from kindergarten through 6th grade growing up as we came into chapel, and I couldn't take it anymore. I think I programmed it once in all of the years. I try to avoid it at all costs.
I'm not saying the one that I don't like and the ones that I avoid. There's one that I like, but I don't like the third verse because it talks about how we're going to not be in slavery's chains anymore, and it kind of makes me unhappy to hear a bunch of middle-class people singing that. But there's one that the rhymes are just so awful and so. Anyway, I make enemies every time I say which kind of music I don't like or whatever. Like one time I said in the congregation that I had to tell the truth when somebody said, "What do you think about clogging?" And it's a kind of dancing that they do in the mountains of North Carolina. And And what do you think about bluegrass? And I said, because I had made my New Year's resolution to tell the absolute truth all the time, which was a big mistake.
What were you thinking?
I don't know. And so I just said, bluegrass music holds a very special place in my heart. And then I said to my congregation, really the place in my heart it holds is the place where I imagine if I believed in hell, what hell would be like. That it would be a bunch of people clogging while bluegrass music played, and I had to do paperwork at the same time.
Wow, you really buried yourself.
And so now I have all these people in my, and they go, oh, of course, but it's bluegrass, so you wouldn't like it. And I'm just like, I just want to take back that one thing. Of course, now I've told everybody here.
Meg's resolution for next year will be to lie as often as possible.
Exactly.
Meg, you're making me cry here.
I'm
sorry. Patrice, we can listen to bluegrass together and not clap about it, and Meg can cry on the side, right?
And we can not clap about it for another reason, for a different reason than we spoke of earlier.
So in our just few minutes left, what is the state of contemporary UU music? I mean, I'm kind of, because of the internet and crowdsourcing, I'm kind of excited. I'm a big fan of Pam Hinkle, who has written some great stuff. We do Let Us Go Out practically every Sunday as our benediction song. Are there any others that what do you think's happening here?
You go ahead, Dan.
Well, I'm trying to think about the answer here. I love a lot of the new music that's coming in, and we have some brilliant composers. I think that we have a tendency towards groupthink in terms of musical styles. So I would like to see us, it's sort of like we swung a pendulum from all the way kind of classical-ish to all the way contemporary jazz feel, and I think we can incorporate a real variety of styles. I do have one kind of issue. I think we have jumped sometimes a little too quickly to only using the words on the screen in some services and some kinds of services, rather than using the hymnals and printed words. And I understand all the great reasons. It's great to get people's heads out of the hymnals and things like that. But it tends to present issues for people who are short and in back, or who have vision disabilities. And it's not always as inclusive as we think it is. So, we love it when it works, but I in our congregation, when we have services where we have words on the screen, we also make sure that those words are available somewhere else in another way.
What I think should happen is that Unitarian Universalist members should be exposed to more different styles, and I think General Assembly is a perfect place for that. And that one of the things I think should happen is that there should be workshops which are showcases, and all of our traveling UU musicians, the musicians who make a circuit of UU churches, should be allowed to sing 3 songs and people just get a feel for them, and that our UU music directors should be able to present the kinds of services that they've presented. Like, not everybody wants to have a Black Sabbath service, but I think that there's so much music that my congregation has used that is just perfect for the worship experience. And I think if UUs could hear it and really think about it, that they would broaden their view. And the other thing I think of about UU music, unfortunately, is there's so many boomers here among us that are running everything that people think contemporary music is the Beatles or
Bob Dylan. The times they are a-changing.
I know. People don't realize that was 40, 50 years ago, and that our kids are just, I mean, if you don't do any Green Day or Panic at the Disco, and I'm probably 40 years out of date on that, or maybe 10, but because my children are in their 20s now, and I don't listen to their music anymore in the car. But I really think that we need to let our teenagers and 20-somethings talk to us about what contemporary music really is.
I like that idea about having it at GA, because sometimes it seems there's a disconnect between perhaps where the music director or maybe where the minister wants to go and where the congregation is. And if it was at GA, because I know a lot of our musicians go to their annual I don't know what, their annual conference, and they get exposed to all kinds of cool stuff, but then they come back to the congregation and the congregation is not with them, right? Yeah.
One thing about our congregation is they will go, musically, they will go anywhere. And it is wonderful. I mean, we really have tried to embrace the diversity of music. I definitely see what you're saying about the sense of what contemporary means.
Yep. Well, we could go on for another 5 or 10 hours.
No, keep talking.
Well, join us next week when we have David Petit on, who will be talking about changes in the fellowshipping process. Thanks for joining us.
Take care.